I've been producing videos here on Quackalope for over 6 years now. And one of the coolest things about this job is the opportunity to play through not only a wide variety of board games, but a wide variety of prototypes. From unique little indie games that I get to show you for the first time ever, to big, expansive, multi-million-dollar campaigns where I got a chance to show it off, to playtest the rules, and talk with the designers and the publishers about the experience of play. Across all those years, I think I've probably played hundreds of prototypes. And every now and then, a prototype stays at the studio. Now, the vast majority of prototypes show up and leave. Either the publisher wants them back, so you deliver them, like the Elden Ring prototype that absolutely would have been on this list. Or you get it in the life cycle of coverage, and so you film your video, and then the game has to continue on to another content creator. But if a campaign gets stalled or canceled, or you happen to be the content creator at the end of that line, and the Kickstarter finishes or the Game Pound project closes with a massive success, you have a few prototypes sitting around. Over the years, I think I've done 1 or 2 purges where I go through my shelf of prototypes, which I actually have here in the studio, determine that I have no room left, and start the process of making sure that the prototype's old enough that no one wants it. Either the game's already been, published and people have the actual copies in their hands, or it's just been sitting on the shelf for a really long time. And then I harvest whatever I can, whether it's miniatures for RPG games, components for other prototypes, or other designs and games in the future, baggies so that I have them and I don't have to go buy piles and piles of them. And then I get rid of it. I can't sell prototypes. I can't give away prototypes to fans or subscribers. Half the time, the publisher doesn't even want to spend the money to get it mailed back into their hands once the project is closed and the game has delivered. And if it's been over 6 months or a year, I've probably already done all the extra additional coverage of it that I needed. And so, a lot of prototypes and a lot of game boxes make their way out of the studio and onto the curb. I'm in the process of doing that right now. I've ran out of room in the studio, and I'm trying to get this space ready to host other content creators and other publishers during 2025. And while hunting through all the prototypes that I have, I've made a list of 10 that are never going to leave, at least in the immediate. Some of these are games that have never and will never exist. Some of them are just gorgeous prototypes close to the final version of the game, and some of them are games that are just so darn good, it's going to stick around until I have a real copy to play. That's just the case sometimes. Like when Townsfolk Tussle came in, and I was waiting for the final copy, we sat and played and explored through that prototype a number of times and had a blast with it. So, these are 10 prototypes that are never leaving my collection. I hope one day to have like a guest room or a little shelf or a wall where I just have a lineup of cool prototypes that we've discovered over the course of Quackalope. Like 20 or 30 or 50, whatever I can convince the wife into letting me keep. Let me know, while you're watching through this, by the way, out of all of these 10, which one would you want? Or is there another game on your mind that if you had the prototype, it would always be in a prize spot on your shelf? I'm going to start with the 3 games that will never exist, because I think that's a really unique point in this conversation. There's a number of games that we've all been able to experience, a number of games we've all been able to play, but then there's a few games that only I and the people who played it with me when we had a copy of the prototype will ever get the chance to dive into. If you haven't watched our gameplay of Kingdoms Forlorn, Kingdoms Come Deliverance, you really should. You should hop over and check it out. I eat raw beet and try to live in the 15th century the best I can with West. This game was a remarkable combination of video game-esque exploration, real multi-voiced narration, and live action all on the table in front of us. One of the best implementations I'd ever found to date. And it just didn't work for the consumer base. the video game was weird and quirky as well, and so I understand where the disconnect happened. And even when I was diving into it before actually playing it, I was confused and a little bit conflicted. But sitting down with Kingdoms Come Deliverance on the table made me so compelled. I played through this prototype multiple times, recorded full gameplay coverage of it, complained to you all that you didn't back it enough for it to fund and come to life. And now I'm holding on to this prototype version as a memory, as a statement, as a little bit of Quackalope history. This game was great. And I hope in the future other games can bite at the heels of what it was doing at the time. But it wasn't right for the time. So, the prototype copy that I have might be some of the only ones to ever exist. Same thing here with Far Cry. Now, Far Cry the board game was a little bit of a different twisted story. They tried to go weird with it. They took away the classic Far Cry-esque solo adventurer move through and, take down bases, and they told a big team play story with real-time actions happening on the board and everyone playing a dungeon crawl, in essence, all at the same time, all trying to move forward, all taking actions, firing weapons, and reacting in real time to other players' decisions. They were doing something strange in the space, and the disconnect between the thematic Far Cry universe and whatever it is they came up with here, and the gameplay style being something innovative and unique, just didn't sing for the audience. But I enjoyed the heck out of this, and I'm a massive Far Cry fan, so the prototype's still here, and it's not going anywhere, kind of like Kingdoms Come Deliverance. It's just one of those games that, for me, worked really well for the audience and what the publisher was communicating to those following along on the Kickstarter. It just didn't click. And because of that, no one else, as far as I'm aware, is ever going to get a chance to play it. This last one that will never exist also comes from a video game. Interesting that all three of these are video game titles, IP that should have had a fan base, could have convinced people, and didn't quite sell the package right, or didn't quite deliver what our community was looking for as an audience. This is a sealed copy of Prison Architect, and it was given to me by another content creator as a gift because they knew that I happen to like quirky things that don't, have any room to stand on. Who knows? Maybe one day I'll open this up and take a look at what the prototype components look like. Maybe even give it a play. We'll see. All I know is that this was covered by a number of big content creators in the space, and then it was canceled pretty darn quickly. I think it had something to do with the theme of it. It really is a game about designing kind of in a tycoon style, a prison where you keep people entrapped as effectively and efficiently as possible, and considering that America has a pay-to-play prison system with quite a lot of personal stories and quite a lot of scandal associated with that, I can see how a smaller, more niche community like our board game space wasn't really interested in having a video game that was popular by controversy coming in and meddling in our business. For me, I think it's neat to have. It's a video game that I was loosely familiar with, and I like the fact that it's a board game that, again, will never exist. I like the fact even more that it's still in shrink, and like I said, maybe one day I'll break it open and actually get it to the table. Let's move on to some games that are here because of just how good they were. And I'm going to keep them around. Not because I always have, the need to play the prototype again, but because I have fond memories of discovering, playing, and or the components were just so impressive, I want to keep them. We've got here a copy of Mythic Mischief, and I'll show you real quick. This is a prototype copy with all the resin miniatures still in their original tubing, and this is how we first played the game. This is how I discovered it. I played this prototype so many times off camera, I lost count. I love Mythic Mischief. It was the first time I came down to the Ivy Studios headquarters, one of the first times I met and collaborated with a number of big content creators in the space, like Before You Play. And this prototype is not taking up a lot of space and has a ton of fond memories and some really beautiful resin components. So, Mythic Mischief is sticking around. Burning Banners is one of those games that sent me a prototype that I'm pretty sure is a finished version. Now, I got this before the Kickstarter closed, so we covered it, showcasing it to an audience of people, but this is a finished version of the game. I mean, this publisher sent a full working rulebook, storybook, and playable copy. Yeah, it's all in bags, and I don't know if that's how the final version came, but this is a gorgeous game. This showed up as a unique little indie gem, something that I was compelled by, but not necessarily convinced I would love. And then we got it to the table, and oh man, this was so cool. I loved the storytelling. I fell in love with the artwork that they created. I thought that it was a war game that was doing something unique in the wargaming space, and I'm not alone in that. A number of other wargamers and wargaming channels have this in their top 10, and I'm still trying to journey through it. It raised about $100,000 on Kickstarter, did very well for what it was aiming for, and has successfully delivered now, but I feel no need to get rid of the copy that they sent me. This could be a finished version, but it showed up as a prototype for me, and so I kind of keep it on that shelf. I want to play through all of this, and I'm super excited to see what else Compass Games comes out with, because Burning Banners was and is good. This is one of those prototypes that's here because I still want to finish playing it. Heroes 3. Not only is this a cool, unique board game, not only is this a insanely successful Kickstarter and now GameFound project, but Heroes 3 is also a game that just took me by surprise. I fell in love with the board game when West and I sat down and learned how to play this, to the point where it is probably the single game that has not left my mind ever since playing the prototype. I think of other games every now and then. I go like, oh yeah, Kingdoms Come Deliverance. Far Cry was a lot of fun. Heroes 3, and maybe it's just because their advertising is really effective across YouTube, GameFound, and Facebook, but Heroes 3 has just always called to me. And yet, I don't have the means to go ahead and back it. The all-in now is many hundreds of dollars beyond what my current board game budget is, and so I've just held on to the prototype. 1, because I think it's neat. 2, because it's probably the most compelling prototype I've ever sat down and played. 3, because I still kind of want to play the prototype and do extra coverage of it. I've intended to do that for a long time. And 4, because it's a good reminder that I need to get an all-in pledge at some point. It'll probably be in another 2 or 3 Kickstarters or 2 or 3 GameFound projects, and it seems like there's plenty of content for them to keep putting out. So let's hope they just go CMON style with this and continue releasing content wave after content wave. Because one of these days, I'm going to be there. Like that $1,000 Too Many Bones pledge or the $1,600 Kingdom Death All-In. Heroes 3 has my name on it. Eventually. One of the more recent games, coming from what is sort of an indie publisher in a way. I mean, the publishers of Oathsworn, Shadowborn Games. This is Avalon. And this is a gorgeous prototype. Yeah, the miniatures are resin, but everything else about it, well, including that, is stunning. And it's fully workable and playable. I mean, the entire game is contained in here. Now, they are still fine-tuning the rules and making changes, and we're working on a gameplay down the road, so that's one of the reasons why it's still here. They might actually still ask me to send this one on, which would break my heart. But we're working on getting a gameplay to the channel to cover the Pledge Manager and showcase this game more effectively. And they're going to be hopefully sending me another deck of cards. So I'll be updating this copy with the newest rules based on how they've continued to change, iterate, and playtest it in the market ever since the Kickstarter has ran. This was and is great, and this is the exact genre that Shira loves to play, and I love to play games with Shira. So it's sticking around, because it's one of those that I know I'm ready to sit down and teach her, and she's going to adore. And moving on, to the final one on this list. This is Roow, the only board game that I actually backed this last year. There's a lot of games that I wish I had backed. I'm working on a top 10 list that breaks them all down, but this is the only one that I actually did. I, am friends with and know the team behind Roow. They created Crimson Scales, the most ambitious fan-made expansion for Gloomhaven that has ever existed. We've got gameplay, by the way, coming of that we recorded earlier this year. I just have to sit down and get it finished edited. And Roow is a prototype that contains like 10 or 12 full chapters. And I didn't get this until after the actual project had finished, after raising about $500,000 on Kickstarter. This is the copy that showed up to me. You see, when you have prototypes floating around, every now and then some get stuck at conventions, and some get stuck with other content creators, and some get stuck over in Europe. And so there wasn't one that freed up in time for us to do coverage of it. Now, I'm going to play through every bit of this, not only to give feedback and, let the team behind it know if I come across anything that's a little bit confusing or a little bit quirky or needs an extra duck or two added in, but then on top of that, along with that, so that I can showcase it and let you all see just how awesome this team is. So this copy's sticking around because it's a game that I want to play, an experience I want to have, something I want to feature here on the channel, and also, and more importantly, because it's the definition of what it means for me to be a board gamer, a board game designer, a publisher, all of it. This is an industry built off of passion and love. That's why I started Quackalope. It's what this channel is here for. I'm not very good at this type of thing. I don't make fan-made expansions and create ambitious, in-depth, hours-long campaign games. But I do film videos. And so this is like the physical representation of what we've tried to accomplish here on the channel. A love letter to board gaming. And it makes me excited and proud to see it on the shelf, just like Crimson Scales does as well. The last two games that I have here on my list are game-esque. They're game-adjacent. They're made by board game publishers. They are officially prototypes, and they're not leaving because they're gorgeous, both usable and beautiful in the most remarkable way. I'm going to set this here, but I'll cover it last. I've got a giant, big old black box to showcase for you all to see. This is Source, or Time Strike, and this is the prototype that they sent. Now, I believe we're going to be doing more coverage of this down the road, and showing this on camera means that they might put me on a list of people that need to send the prototype back to them, which is part of the risk of filming videos like this. Sometimes people have just forgotten that they left you with something glorious. But this box not only contains a pile of beautiful miniatures for their game, like these wild abominations, their game Time Strike, but it also contains the Source system. And the Source system is a hex tile system of stacking, colorful, and beautiful terrain tiles. They did fantastic over on Kickstarter, and I'm super excited to see these in the marketplace. For me, what these terrain tiles allow me to do is have a box of infinite RPG. A box where I can layer, stack, create, and tell the most epic story in the world. They link together, they stack on top of each other, you can make high rises and low plains. They've got lava flows and green pastures and giant tiles that set the foundation for everything else. This is like Lego building bricks, except for an RPG diehard. And while I still struggle to get RPG games off the shelf and onto the table, and while I'm still slowly and surely running out of time with my new son, I still do collect things, like miniatures from board games that I'm no longer keeping, and terrain tiles from prototypes or companies that make really cool projects, with the hope and dream that one day, maybe eventually, maybe when my son is 17 years old, I'll be able to sit down and play an RPG with him. And I'll be able to pull out the Source tiles. And it'll be magical. there's a lot of things that I hold on to with the intention of doing something cool with them in the future. This is just beautiful. Most of the Awakened Realm prototypes that we've covered are one-shots or two-shots of a game system and scenario. Their miniatures are beautiful, and more than half of them have had to be sent on to other content creators, but they're not things that can stick around because they don't have a lot of gameplay content left after you've already explored them, and the full copy of the game is absolutely showing up at your doorstep. But this is one of those that have just went on the shelf and remained there ever since we got them in hand. This is from their unique dice system that they released. We have a Nemesis die here that makes things less equal. We have a Hex die here, and I don't remember what all of these are for. Some Dwarven die, it looks like here, or a Jester die, a Rolling Cube die, and finally a die for, I think this is a die for, what's the game? With all the cities. Blanking on it right now. I'm really good at blanking on things when it's important to have them. This is Awakened Realms Vault Story Dice. Emotions, Intruders, we have the Koi, which is a lucky die for you to utilize. And, come on, think of it. Think of it. There's things to tell. I don't remember, and it's not going to be here, and I'm not going to be able to find it quick enough. It's the city game. They deluxeified it. It's beautiful. You know what it is. You got, it's hexes, and they're building, and they made it. It was a euro, and they made it so pretty. God darn you, ADHD and dyslexia that makes my short-term working memory and my ability to recall specific names, dates, and locations almost impossible. One day I will foil you. These dice they're just beautiful. They're just gorgeous. And these are prototype dice that came in a wonderful Awakened Realms box to really showcase and feature them. And I'm excited to see the final dice show up, but I don't know that anything's really going to beat getting this from a publisher and being part of that story. So it's stuck around. It's in the back of my studio at all times. And these games aren't going anywhere. If you hear a little bit of whining in the background, that's my baby monitor on my phone that I forgot to turn the sound off of. He's currently coming out of a 5 or 6 hour sleep and crying because he wants mom to wake him up and give him a little bit of food. I'm going to go ahead and finish the video now and go take a peek. Because 1, I love him. 2, he's adorable. And 3, she's going to move the bassinet when she wakes him up, meaning that I'm not going to be able to spy on him anymore, and he makes my nights better every time I get to see him. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Whatever the case, though, whatever you do, remember to do the important thing. Hold on to things that are unique, that tell a story, that you enjoy, that give you pleasure. And get rid of all the other stuff. There's way too much junk on the shelf upstairs. We'll see you later. Bye.